Hey, it's Michelle Butt, and it's time for another Face Life Friday. And today we're talking about the not so fun parts of relationship. Actually, what I thought I'd talk about today is about when you that's a really strong word, when you come to a place where you are having an argument with your loved one, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your significant other, whether it's your child, whether it's your parent, or even a colleague, who knows. But I personally hate arguing. I can tell you, I've been with my sweetheart for over 2 years now, and we rarely argue. In fact, I can count on one hand the number of times we've had a disagreement in the time we've been together. Some of that is because of our past experiences together, and some of that is because I really understand his face and he really understands mine because I tell him how to understand me. And so we really have this really good way of communicating with each other, which I'm very grateful for. And the work that I do, I have to credit that for the way we connect with each other. However, recently, in the last few months, we actually had our first really big argument, I'd have to say. And I can't even remember what it was over now. That's how insignificant arguments usually are. But what happened there was that we were very disconnected in the course of that argument. And in the process of coming back together after we argued, what we realized was we had to teach each other how to argue with each other. As much as we're good communicators, there were things that trigger him and things that trigger me that we didn't know existed before because we hadn't had a disagreement that was big enough. And we had to learn how to look for those past pains, those past experiences that both of us have held deep inside that came bubbling out when we were confronted with a trigger in our own very good relationship. And it allowed us to talk about what he didn't want me to do when we were disagreeing and what I didn't want him to do when we were disagreeing. But not just for the sake of you can't do that or you can't say that, but for the sake of this is how I react when that happens. This is what has happened to me in the past. This is where my mind goes. This is where my thoughts go. This is where my heart goes. And that is a very different place than just kissing and making up. What I'm trying to say is when you are in a disagreement with someone, there is so much more going on than just the thing that is happening in the moment. There is that person's innate archetypal nature where they go under stress, which could be very different than where you go. Trust me, he and I go to very different places when we're stressed. And when you're stressed, you tend not to remember that. You tend not to say, oh, wait a minute, that's just his warrior reacting. In the moment, you just want to be your stress self, and you don't want to necessarily confront or look at his stress self and then tailor your conversation tactics consciously to help him bring down his stress. But that is what needs to be done. And it's very hard to do in the moment because in the moment, he's in his past, I'm in my past. He wants to be right, I want to be heard. I want to be right, he wants to be heard. Or even if it's not a you and he, it could be you and your child, or you and your partner, or you and your parent, or you and a colleague. When we are arguing with each other, when we are in disagreement, it is very important to remember to see that other person, to see things from their point of view, or at least when things calm down, to be able to ask, how do I argue with you? How do I argue effectively? Because we're human beings. We are going to disagree. We're going to have arguments. But how do we make this not so bad next time? How do we bring each other down to a place where we can actually communicate and not get all bent out of shape? Trust me, this exercise between us was not easy by any means, but I think it was so transformational for our relationship, because now he understands why certain things trigger me, and I understand why certain things trigger him because of our life experiences, because of who we are in our faces that make us respond that way. And it's not just, oh, this is just what I do, so too bad, deal with it, which we often hear in relationship. And trust me, I have heard that before. Too bad, just deal with it. It's not a too bad, just deal with it. There is always some underlying whys behind everyone's behavior, especially when there's a disconnect in the connection and the communication. And if you can realize that, then potentially you can start discussions that can make the disagreements fewer and far between. And if you have the wherewithal to learn how to communicate more effectively, to see people and see who they are, then potentially you can change the way you connect with them before things even escalate, which is something we've been able to do throughout the course of our relationship. But every now and then in every relationship, things are going to become more disagreement than agreement, because we're human and we dig in our heels sometimes. Why I'm saying this today is because this week has really been about communication and learning how to communicate effectively with people. And one place is in that stressed place. In the world today, when people have disagreements on a more global scale, they forget to see each other. They forget to see each other's point of view, and then things go way out of proportion. But if you can do that, if we can start, and then potentially help the world start to see the faces and to say, how do I disagree with you without this blowing up into something crazy? How can I disagree with you and still honor you? Then potentially things in this world could be very different, and in your own personal relationships, they could be very different too. So I want you to think about that a little bit today. And if you're in a relationship and you need some help connecting and communicating, then by all means, reach out to me. You know where I am. I have links to my website and all the resources that we have available to you in the description of whatever platform you are seeing this video on. And I wish you peace and harmony in your relationships. And if you are in a disagreement, that it is one that transforms you into getting closer together once it's over, rather than separating you, especially if it's where you want to be. I will see you next Friday. Bye for now.